You're listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com for all your racing merchandise needs. I'm your co-host, Aaron Mack, the other co-host. You may have seen walking out of Barber Lounge 459 with a big old smile on his face. You may have seen him at a dirt track. He is Scott Bally.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going, Scott?
I'm doing good.
So this is a special episode. We did one of these last year with Pete Hallsmer and Mimo Gitley. Really great. And this year will be great as well. Because it is our 2023 24 Hours of Daytona tribute preview show, whatever you want to call it. And we talked to two very special guests. Well, first off, me and Scott both talked to Chris Kneifel, who won the 2001 24 Hours of Daytona with the Corvette team, with Ron Fellows, Johnny O'Connell, and Frank
Freon?
Freon. I think so. Yeah. If I'm wrong, I do apologize, but I think that was it. And it was great to talk to Chris, and we've had him on the show before, and he definitely has a lot of good insight about 24 Hours. We talk a lot about just his experience winning the race and just, kind of his thoughts on racing today. And then I did a shorter interview with good friend of the show, Randy Lanier. And he has a really interesting story about kind of how he was a fan, and that was his first kind of introduction to 24 Hours of Daytona racing. And he was a fan, and someone said, hey, he'd been racing at that point, but he was just going there as a spectator, and he had his helmet with him, and they're like, hey, there's an opening. And he went over there and got in the car and was pretty quick, and almost as quick as their factory drivers, and they put him in the race just off the street. Obviously, I think there would be some limitations now. You have to have an FIA license and a couple other things. That may be a little harder now, but and he talked, he had actually raced. I didn't realize it, but he did race in several other 24 Hours of Daytona races as well. He said they almost won it once. So, he talked a little bit about that, talked about kind of what he thinks about racing today. He goes to the 24 Hours of Daytona. He will be there this year. And it was great to talk to him. And, I think it's two good people to have on. And it should be good races here.
Yeah, no, I can't think of. There's a lot of great legends of that race. Chris for sure is one of them, and obviously Randy, very successful driver in his own right. So they have a lot of great insight on that. And Chris talks about a little bit, like a lot of nuances of running 24 hours and how to save the car. Even though you're running flat out, you're still looking to save the car in different ways, and he discusses that. So, I just think it was great inside information from the horse's mouth, basically.
Absolutely. Randy, 1984 IMSA champion, and like we said, Chris Kneifel, very successful sports car drivers. I thought they were two great people to talk to, and ironically, both of them also drove in the Indy 500. That seems to be a common connection with a lot of people we have, right? But
right,
it's cool. So it was really great. I think people really enjoy it, and like I said, this year's race will be pretty good, I think, and it's the biggest field they've had in a long time. Was 60 cars. I think they had to put a cap on it. Have a lot of the European teams over, and I think it'll be a pretty good race, and be interesting to see kind of how it all pans out. And there's several of our former guests in the race. I know from our McGilvery's live show, I saw Gabby Chavez and Jared Andretti both qualified well. I think they're going to be on the front row for their class. So congratulations to them. And, unfortunately, I saw Will Power had to withdraw from the race due to his wife having some health issues that they announced. So definitely, sorry to hear that. Hopefully she makes a speedy recovery. And then also Kevin Magnussen was racing with his dad, I think in the GT class, and Kevin Magnussen had to have surgery on his hand, I believe. So he had to pull out as well. But other than that, I think there's 10 IndyCar drivers in the field, and I think there's a couple NASCAR drivers. Austin Cindric's one of them, and yeah, it'll like I
It'll
said,
be a great
it's
race.
yeah, definitely will.
Yeah, no,
Definitely
it'll
look
be a
forward to
great
it again.
race.
And if you have Peacock, you can watch the entire thing on Peacock. Part of it will be on NBC Motorsports. NBC, I think, does a great job with it. I'm sure Dale Jr. And probably Hinchcliffe and Parker Klickerman, all those guys will be doing that broadcast, and they definitely do a good job.
Yeah, Parker, Parker, when he ran midgets, his shop was behind ours, out where our shop was off Country Club. He's a good dude, man. I like Parker. He was, I didn't talk to him a ton, but he was a good dude.
Absolutely, and he's one of those guys that he's definitely got a knack for the TV stuff. And he does a great
Yeah,
job. So,
he's a
you know,
good race car driver too. I mean, he can flat get it done too in a race car. So
absolutely.
it's a weird dynamic, really, because I mean, just full time racing, I guess, for lack of a better term, just didn't really work out for him. But he still can run, you know, certain races, and he's still young enough that he's current enough, and he can really give great insight to what's going on. So, yeah, I like that dude, and I just I'm really glad you guys break in the sport one way or the other.
Absolutely. So I won't make our intro too long because we have Chris and Randy. We start out with Randy. I think we're gonna start with Randy, then we're gonna go into the Chris interview. And Chris interview is a little longer, so don't wanna don't want to bore people too much with our intro, and so people can just get straight into it.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
special thanks real quick to some of our partners. First off, Racer Collect. Just saw Patrick Patton this past weekend at the memorabilia show at the Delara factory, so it was great to see him. And please go to racercollect.com if you're looking for any racing memorabilia. Also, Fast Times Indoor Karting. We have one video that we will be releasing sometime in a few weeks, hopefully. Already recorded, and we have several others with some other former drivers that we will be recording in the future. So looking forward to that. Those are a lot of fun. Please go to Fast Times Indoor Karting if you want to have a great time at an indoor karting track. Definitely best one in Indy. So please check them out. Last but not least,
Good folks are good guys. Hanging there, located in Indianapolis. Please, if you have any issues, or if you just need general maintenance or checkups, give them a call. Great people, and they do great work.
absolutely. So please check them out. And I do want to, mention McGilvery's. I think we will be doing our live show, I think February 28th, but we will keep everyone updated on that. So no January show, but I think February 28th. And we'll get the details of that out. And Top Gun Racing, Grand King Race Shops, thanks to them for helping us get that together. And yeah, I think hope everyone enjoys this preview show, and hope everyone enjoys 24 hours at Daytona. And until then, I hope everyone has a great week.
Yep, and check out the Rich Fogler Scholarship. Go to the website,
Mhm.
and they'll have a live auction. Goes to a great cause. Everybody, take care. Please enjoy.
We are joined by returning guest, good friend of the show, 1984 IMSA GT champion, Randy Lanier, for our 2023 Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona preview show. Randy, it's always an honor to have you on the show, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I love the 24 Hours of Daytona. Looking forward to it. I first started racing there in 1982 was my first 24 Hours of Daytona with a BB512 Ferrari. And from then it was some Porsches and some Marches, and finished second in 1983, which was my best year. Thought had a chance to win it, but the rain kind of crept in, and they red flagged the race, and the race was stopped earlier. Didn't run the whole 24 hours in 1983. AJ Ford won that year. I finished second. Our team.
Right. And before anything else, I wanted to hold up your book. Make sure, if you haven't, go to Amazon.com, right? And they can buy your book.
Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, Survival of the Fastest. Got a mixture of the marijuana smuggling, the prison, and racing cars.
Absolutely. So, talking about Rolex 24. So your first one was kind of an interesting story, right? I mean, you went there as a spectator and you ended up in a car.
Yeah, amazing how life can throw you some fastballs, curveballs. Went there as a spectator and ended up driving a BB 512 Ferrari, only to have the gearbox break. I think we ran, I'm not sure, I want to say 18 hours maybe.
And what year was that?
1982.
1982. So were you doing full IMSA then, or was that before you? That's before Blue Thunder.
Yeah, that was before Blue Thunder. Blue Thunder, the GTP March team we put together and ended up winning the championship was 1984. I did the 1982 24 Hours of Daytona. Was my first real race there. I had been driving some 356s in Sports Car Club of America since '79. So, but not the 24-hour race, just some local SCCA races at the track.
And you had, so when you showed up for that event, I mean, you had your helmet and suit ready to go just in case, right?
Wherever I took my motorhome, I'd take my helmet and suit. So yeah, I had the helmet and suit because I'd been driving in SCCA at the E-Production in a 356 1957 Porsche. So my helmet and suit and stuff stayed in my motorhomes. So it was with me.
Right. No, that's smart. So as far as the track goes, how do you think the track, I mean, they didn't have the bus stop back then, did they? The chicane in the back?
Year they didn't have it. They changed it, I think, in 1983 they had it.
Right. Cool. So I mean, how different was that track really? I mean, the banking and stuff, you probably hadn't driven anything with banking like that, right? At that point?
No, the only other banking that was like that is they had a Texas World Speedway that had good banking. Charlotte, North Carolina had banking, so I'd driven those tracks. But Daytona is unique with their I think it's 33% banking there.
Yeah, it's a lot different when you're actually walking on it than what it looks on TV.
Oh, when you're walking on it, it blows your mind. You go, boy, I didn't see this on TV.
Right. And what was the and that would have been your first, was that your first 24-hour race at that point? Your first Rolex 24 was your first 24-hour race?
The first 24-hour race was with the BB 512 team.
What I'm saying, that was your first ever 24 at any track.
Yes,
that was your first ever 24.
Yes, that was my first 24-hour race. Yes, I had been watching as a spectator, but never driven it. I started watching. I started going to the 24 Hours of Daytona and didn't miss a year until I got imprisoned and locked up. So for importing marijuana, and started that in the late 70s.
Right.
As a spectator.
Oh, okay. What and how, I mean, did you approach that race any different? I mean, how did the 24 hours, I mean, did that really change how you approached it at all? Because obviously it's an endurance race, right? So you're racing a lot within 24 hours.
So one good thing about being a team is being a team player. And that means treating the car the way it should be treated for a 24-hour race. Not using up the tires and the brakes because your team members are going to be getting in it right after you. So you want to be kind to the tires and the brakes and the car itself. Now with these cars, it's like full out blown racing. Not endurance racing. You think they're running as hard as they can run for 24 hours. I think in the 70s and 80s, they would try to kind of pace themselves a little bit. And we would there would be about 3 drivers that would do 3-hour stints. Now some of these teams have 4 drivers, maybe more, and they don't do the 3-hour stints. The majority of the teams now, I think, are doing a little bit less stints than they did back in the day.
Right. I know at one point, a couple people we've talked to who've raced in the Rolex 24, at some point, I mean, there was just 2 drivers for some teams, which is just crazy.
A lot of teams had 2 drivers in the 70s.
Right. And so obviously you raced in the Indy 500, Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona, 24 Hours of Le Mans. How do you think really like the pageantry with Rolex 24 kind of compares to the other races? Obviously it's not as big, but still a pretty prestigious race, probably the most prestigious 24-hour race in the United States.
Oh, absolutely. The 24 Hours Daytona is golden. And I love that race. it has a lot of fans, a lot of diehard fans. The weather gets a little chillier here in Daytona in January, and to me, it's a fabulous race. I love it. To compare it with Le Mans, it's completely different. Whereas with the track and the atmosphere is different. I love the 24 Hours of Daytona. I'm looking forward to it. And if any of the viewers haven't went, please check it out, because you'll experience a great time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when we kind of look at racing today, obviously things have changed a little bit. The big topic of conversation with people these days is the ranking system, the gold, silver, and bronze. Kind of what's your input kind of on how the sport has kind of changed with different things like that?
Yeah, we didn't have the rankings back then. You could just go drive in Le Mans, go drive here in Daytona, a Sebring. If you had your competition license, you get in the car and drive. That with the rankings maybe have brought a little bit of safety to the other team members and so forth, hopefully, and getting qualified people, because when you get, sometimes these long endurance races would have 100 cars in the field, 90 cars in the field. That's a lot of cars to be on the track at the same time, with multiple series in themselves, from the GTU, GTO, and GTP cars. Well, you get 3 or 4 different classes of cars going at different rates of speed. You really got to pay attention. And then you don't have the ranking. You got a lot of amateur drivers that are maybe doing their first races, and you have to just really be on your toes in those days.
Right, right. And the problem now is it seems like there's a lot of very qualified drivers that have trouble getting a ride, because so I think silver, if you're a silver driver, that's the hardest driver to find, like to be able to get a ride. And they say bronze is the easiest, and a lot of drivers, once they get to a certain age, like Johnny O'Connell, for example, who's won Rolex 24, he's a silver, and I think he said it'll be a lot easier for him to get a ride once he turns, I think, 60, because then he'll be bronze. So it's really crazy how kind of the politics are involved now, with the sport.
Yeah, one of the things is you've got to bring still sponsorship or money. These seats aren't open for anybody just because you've got a license. Hopefully that would change, but unfortunately it takes a ton of money to run a 24-hour race, and you got to bring money.
Oh, absolutely. And your first Rolex 24, you actually, I think it was like $500 or something you had to pay. Didn't you have to bring money for your first one when you walked in as a spectator?
I think I gave him $5,000.
1,000, okay. Yeah, it's probably a little more now.
Yeah.
So like, I guess my last thing is, obviously you were locked up for 27 years. You get out, you go to the Rolex 24. I think 3 or 4 years after you got out, maybe 5 years, pretty soon after. Kind of what was your impression? Going there 30 something years later. Obviously the cars are a lot different. The technology is a lot different.
The smell's the same. The rubber, the smell, the exhaust, the sound. So much, and I loved it all. But the reception I got was just stellar. I just was really felt good to get the reception, coming in from like being the black sheep of the family to coming in to getting a really good reception from friends that I used to race with and compete against, and some of the people I drove against. So it was great seeing all the camaraderie there, and the take that I got from being away for so long. I really got a good reception coming back into the racing world.
Absolutely, and we were joking because we got to tour the Ganassi race shop a couple months ago, and we got to see their prototype, and it almost looks like a spaceship, more so than a car. And we were joking about how the Blue Thunder racing operation was probably a little different than that.
Yeah, the cars has changed, but the excitement and experience that you get when you go to a racetrack hasn't changed. So we're blessed to have the 24 hours coming up here in a couple of weeks.
So we are joined by a returning guest. He was a 2001 part of the 2001 overall winning team of the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona, Chris Kneifel. Chris, it's always an honor to talk to you. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. It's nice to be back with the R2R guys.
I know you actually were listening to our podcast pretty early on, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I enjoy catching up with you guys, and as I mentioned last time we talked, particularly I like guys that I know because it's just fun to hear their version of history. Then I can compare notes with how I remember things. It's all good.
Well, what's the old saying? It's your side, my side, and the truth.
It's something like that, exactly. Somewhere therein lies the truth.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
We still need to try to do a show with you and Hallsmer together. I think that'd be a good one.
Right. Yeah. Well, all right. I do all the talking.
No, Pete talks a lot.
Yeah, he does. I love Pete. He's
He's moving. He actually told me he's moving to Indiana, I think.
Moving back to Indiana.
Yep.
Oh boy, that's get him a snow shovel for his housewarming gift.
Well, he lived in Michigan before, so.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Good point.
He's
So-
moving south very slowly.
Yeah. Getting south of what is the not interstate but State Route 30? Isn't that the thing? If you're south of State Route 30 in Indiana, you're in the south, right? And that's up north.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, I
I
think
haven't heard that either.
yeah, southern Indiana begins at like south of State Route 30 or something like that.
No, I
Which
was
is- Wait.
texting with him the week it was like super cold here. It was like below zero, and he's like, "Yeah, we want to move to Indiana where it's a little warmer." And I was like, "You realize it's below zero?"
Right? No, it's crazy. Well, two of my two sons, both in the last year and a half, moved from Southern California to Chicago.
Oh,
So yeah, right. Go figure. So they're experiencing winter. It's good for them.
yeah, real winter.
Real
Like,
winter.
That's
Yeah.
winter there. That's
Yeah. So I'm just sitting here in my shorts and a t-shirt, suffering because it's like 70 degrees.
I know. The
Brutal.
so obviously we're doing a Rolex 24 preview show. I of all the people we've had on, I don't think there's anyone better than you to definitely have on. First off, you were the overall winner of it. We're talking about Pete Hollister. We had Pete on for our show last year, and he won it multiple times as well in his class. So no, it's great to have you on, and we'll talk a little bit about the race. But first off, obviously, like I said, you won the 2001 race with, and your teammates were, and actually we just had one of your teammates on our podcast, Johnny O'Connell. We haven't released it yet.
Johnny Rudd. Yeah, he's a good dude. He's
Yeah.
a good dude.
So
Yeah,
you were
John-
with Johnny O'Connell, Ron Fellows, and there was someone else, right?
and Frank Freon. Normally we would just do 3 drivers, but because the Earnhardts, Dale Jr. drove in our sister car in the 4 car, or actually they were the 3 car there. But so the 2 Earnhardts drove with Kelly Collins and Andy Pilgrim. So Frank Freon came over and did some time in our car, which was pretty good timing on his part. So he got to join the winning crew, which was pretty cool. Always good to have Frank. He's such a good dude. And that was Johnny O'Connell's first race with Corvette Racing. So
Oh, wow.
that was quite the debut for Johnny as well.
And now
Pretty
he's the
neat.
most successful GM factory driver in the United States, I believe.
Oh yeah, if you take his world challenge with all the Cadillac stuff that he did
Yeah.
after Corvette, yeah, he definitely tallied up a bunch. I'm sure he'd like to continue to pad that. No, he's not done yet, so it's all good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So how many Rolex 24s did you race in?
I did, let's see, I did a couple in the 962
Mhm.
and then 3 with Corvette, so like 5 maybe 6. So yeah, it was but there was a big gap because it was sort of like the 80s and then late 90s and early 2000s. So we did the three that I did with Corvette Racing would have been 99, 2000, 2001. And we were third in class in 99, leaking oil all over the place. Good thing it was raining. No one could really tell, except that we had to stop for oil more than we had to stop for fuel, which was fairly comical. And then 2000, we were second overall to the Orca Viper, the Olivier Beretta, Carl Wendlinger car. And they beat us by just less than 30 seconds. It was like 29 seconds was the margin of victory. But that race got spoiled for us in the first few hours, whereas we had a problem with the fuel tank in the pits. It wasn't dispensing all of the fuel into the race car. So by the time that got sorted out, we had to make some extra pit stops in the early hours of that race, which put us into a hole that we ultimately never were able to climb out of. So, and then of course, overall win in 2001. So it was a pretty good progression, 3-2-1.
Well, I think that's a really interesting thing to think about in endurance racing. I mean, there is things that just go wrong, and it just and then you have to overcome them. And some of them, obviously, you can't overcome for the win. Sometimes it just becomes the finishing is the win at that point. Yeah,
without a doubt. And to keeping things in perspective, and your point is a good one. Our first year with Corvette Racing, the goal was to finish the race, period. And it was to bring both cars home, running at the end of the race. And it really, that was job one. And, that proved to be quite a difficult task because we were definitely limping. Like I say, we were squirting oil big time, but, it worked out and we were able to do that. And that was, that was a success. And it was a success because we achieved our goal of finishing the race. And then at that point, you learn from all of the things that you need to improve on, all the things that went wrong, whether it was mechanically or how the team worked or what the drivers did. You take a good look in the mirror and you evaluate, and then you come back stronger. And, that was really one of the most fun things to do, was building that program from the early days, was to go through that process. It was pretty cool.
Now in 2001, obviously you talk about, the Earnhardts. Do you think that more helped the program, or maybe just caused, obviously it caused a lot of media attention around it, which, can create some conflict as well. Like what do you think they really did with the program, the racing in it?
Actually, it was pretty cool because they didn't, and I don't know how many people know this or not, but they did not just show up and drive. They actually did a lot of testing in the fall of 2000. They did lots, and I mean, a lot of miles, a lot of hours, and they put in a lot of time, behind the wheel, getting used to the car, and so they worked hard at it. So they didn't just show up at Daytona and drive the thing around. They took it very, very seriously, and that was pretty cool to see. Now, in terms of did it help or hurt the team? In the big picture, because you have to remember, back in those days, Corvette Racing was still in its infancy, and having them do that was a huge deal, and it was hugely beneficial for the team, just in terms of, as you mentioned, the notoriety and all the attention that they brought to the program. And of course, what it did is it shifted the focus squarely onto the 3 car, which was obviously Dale's number at Daytona, and it put the focus on them, and it made it, in a sense, it almost made it easier for like Ron and myself and Johnny, because we just flew under the radar, and we knew we were the car to beat anyway. Like we weren't remotely worried about dealing with those guys on the racetrack, because we knew we were faster than they were, and head to head, they weren't going to beat us. So that wasn't even an issue. But in terms of just in the weeks preceding the race, there was really no attention on us, which, like I said, it allowed us to fly under the radar. And there, in the true sense, it does take pressure off you, because you're not the focus of attention. So it does make it a little bit easier. But of course, once the race starts, you have to perform.
It's funny. We're talking about factory factory team racing and that sort of thing. And you know, of course, right now, Andretti's are wanting to go F1 racing with Cadillac. And you hear the retort from the F1 teams basically saying that American car companies don't know how to go racing. And I beg to differ. My brother worked for that Peerless Chevy team for a while. And when these car companies want to go racing, they go racing.
Oh,
And you know, it's just it's so funny to listen to them talk posture, more or less, because American car companies can go racing when they want to go racing.
oh, there's no question about it. It's just that, look, that's the elitism and the snobbery of that ilk, you know,
Right.
and they look on it's whether it's an American driver or American teams that are wanting to go into Formula One, you know, they look down on us regardless, you know, and it doesn't matter what it is, even in society, you know, there's that sort of thing. So to me, that's really not that big of a surprise. Now, having said that, it would be nice to have an American team go over there and actually
Perform.
And then at that point, you can, you know, give them one of those.
Perform as an American team.
Yes,
well.
yes. And, you know, and really, you know, go over there and win, which would be cool. And a lot of that, look, I mean, when it comes to the car.
Excuse me. I'm so sorry. Let me shut this door here. My apologies.
Yeah,
sorry about that, guys. The cat kicked the door open, and now people are walking in, and it's getting loud.
It's a strong cat, but the big thing is, will they commit the resources? Because let's face it, it's cubic dollars in Formula One, and you know, is GM ready to make that sort of commitment? Obviously, Michael has other sources of revenue, which is good to see, but you know, having a technical partner and, you know, someone that can put, you know, substantial amounts of dollars behind the program is obviously necessary. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that you're right. I mean, that is the thing to be seen. I mean, on the surface, it looks like they're ready to start marching down that road. I mean, so it'll definitely be interesting. You know, they just broke ground on that new facility here in you know, north of Indy, and they seem ready to do whatever it takes to go do this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, it's about the only thing Michael's not fielding a team in is Formula One. He's everywhere else, which is pretty legit.
Well, he said today that once they get this F1 deal done, he wants to be in NASCAR, and then that'll pretty much be it.
That's good for him.
That's what I thought.
Man, that's awesome. That's very cool. And look, with these new NASCAR cars, which are finally, certainly in my lifetime, it's the first car they've ever had that's actually a legit race car. And so now would be a good time to get in there, because at least they're not these, you know, big old giant tanks that just can't perform. You know, at least they have a good race car. So be a good time to do it.
Right.
Pretty cool. I like it. Good for you, Michael. It's awesome. So what's up with the Rolex? What are we going to talk about?
So, I mean, first off, I mean, this year, I think it's the biggest field, right, Scott? Or one of the biggest fields, because it capped at 60. Yeah. And just 2 years ago, I think it was the lowest car count, which was like 38, and that was in 2000, I believe.
Yeah, it used to be up in the 70s and 80s. You know, I'm sure they capped it somewhat because look, these new prototypes are not small race cars. They're like big, giant race cars, sort of like, you know, the new Formula One cars. If you compare them to the F1 cars of the 1980s or something, they dwarf them. And you know, these new GTP style IMSA cars, they're quite large. So I'm sure they've had to make accommodations in terms of the length of the pit boxes, which obviously, I'm not sure how many of the prototypes there are. I think it's less than 10, but you know, if you start adding 5 feet in length of each pit box, you right there, you shrink your amount of available length in pit lane. So I'm sure that has something to do with it, but look, I'm sure it's quality over quantity. I'm sure they've thought plenty hard on that number to get to. I think they're starting 61, which is something like that, but it's a good field. It would be cool if the GTP field is able to grow a little bit in the next couple of years, where it nudges up into at least the mid-teens or closer to 20 of the GTP cars, and sort of get it back to how it was in the 962 days back in the 80s, where you had pretty large fields of the GTP cars. But the one thing I'm most excited about is we're back for the first time in so many years that the cars are the stars. Finally,
Yep.
these GTP cars, the cars are the stars. They're legit. They're beautiful. They're sexy. And that's just been such a long time coming. I mean, gosh, if you go back to the old Daytona prototype days, those were but I mean, they were seriously just horrible race cars. And,
Yeah, just big tanks.
they were just slow and ugly and whatever. And, they obviously served their purpose at the time because of what was going on in the sport, but they were junk. And this is what needs to be happening. So this is, to me, a huge, great step in the right direction for sports car racing in this country. It's really cool. And I'm excited for the cars being the stars, like I say, and be able to watch them perform. It'll be really cool.
That's
if you were
funny.
setting the field, I'm so sorry. If you were setting the field, what do you think the good number is for the elite class? What do you think? I mean, because we're right under 10 now.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think it's?
I think it
14, 16.
I think it's like in the 16 to 20. Like 16 would be actually 16 would be a really good number, but 20 would. If you could have 16 like full-time runners, and maybe you pick up an extra 2 or 3, 4 for your Daytona, Sebring, Petit Le Mans type thing, and make the field grow a little bit there. But in 16 might be a little optimistic, and if it ends up being 12, I mean 12 is better than 9, for
Right.
darn sure. And it's just better, having more. And I think if Porsche historically does customer cars, so as that program evolves and they're able to spin out some customer cars, that's where that number can come from. I'm not suggesting that you need 4 more manufacturers. You just need one of those manufacturers to provide customer cars, and likely that would be Porsche. And if they could sell 4 or 5 of those, you turn 9 into 14, and you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, that would. I think that I agree with you. I think that would be the perfect range to have, because if you get too many, I don't know. You
don't need too many. What you need is good ones, and they obviously the 9 that are legit. So
that's right.
They've got that, but then you need a few more privateer things that are like can run with the big boys. And then if you have a couple that are not quite as good, that's okay too. Because you need to bring teams up from your lower echelons that are maybe coming from the smaller prototype categories, or want to move from GT racing or wherever they come from, where they can come in and sort of get their feet wet. It'd be really good. But in the meantime, we got what we got, and it's something to really look forward to. And so we're obviously talking mostly about the GTP, and that's what should be talked about. But we have a really solid GT category that technically 2, because you have the GT Pro and then the AM, which I think is stupid, but whatever. They should just have one, call it good. And these amateur, the amateur, they're just as good as the the pro. They have, like have one quote unquote bronze driver, and the rest guys they're all A-list guys anyway. So it's kind of a silly thing, but I guess that's what pays the bills these days. But that's going to be a heck of a race. And the thing that'll be interesting is you have the tried and proven reliability. They're pretty much bulletproof. All those GT cars, they've got that figured out. All of them have it figured out. So they're just going to go out there and rip it. And so that's almost a known. They're just going to go out there and run their race, and there shouldn't be a whole lot of surprises other than the unknown, traffic and whatever. But those cars are pretty reliable, so that's interesting. But then you have the flip side with the new category with the GTP cars. It is an unknown. It's they're all new cars. They're new for everybody, and even though they've been testing, they certainly haven't been doing enough testing.
Right.
So, I mean, you think back, Petit Le Mans was not that long ago.
Right.
And that's when they really first started turning wheels, like the day or 2 days after Petit Le Mans. And, so they've had a very short period of time to sort of, massage these cars and get to learn them. And stuff will happen. You can expect some, some unknowns, some attrition, some stuff might happen. And it'll be interesting to see where's in the more recent years with the prototype cars, they went out and basically just ran sprint. They sprinted the whole race. They were going, hard at it, from the green flag. And it'll be interesting to see if that's something that they even consider doing. I mean, maybe a couple guys try it, but it might be interesting to see if a couple of the cars actually just sort of try and stay on and around the lead lap, or maybe even not even worry about getting a lap down, 2 laps down, and just run a little bit more conservative. And what I mean by conservative, obviously, to make lap time, I mean, as bulletproof as these cars are these days, there's little things you can do as a driver, all of the little nuances that just make it easier on the car. And it's as much that like if you're going through the bus stop and there's bumps on the transition up to the when you climb up onto the banking twice a lap, and you're full throttle. But if you have the throttle pinned to the floorboard, everything is rigid in the car. And I mean, it's just rigid. So when you go over those bumps, the drivetrain, the axles, everything, the gearbox, it just, all that shock wave goes right through all of the mechanical parts. And if you just literally, it's almost just like if you just reduce the pressure on the throttle just ever so slightly as you're going through the bumps, it relieves a lot of the pressure and the stresses that go through the mechanical parts of the car. And yeah, it starts to cost you hundredths, maybe tenths of a second a lap every time you do that. But in the big picture, it also is the thing that, keeps you in the race for the whole time. So you don't have gearbox problems or half shaft problems or, stuff of that nature. So it'll be interesting to see if some of these teams play it a little bit more, or maybe they have one car a little bit more of a rabbit and one is a little bit more conservative.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's obviously something they know going in. It's all they have a plan, and they're the ones that know it. But it'll be interesting because these cars might have some technical difficulties, and and let's see if it rains. If it rains, it makes it even more interesting, right?
That's right.
So a couple things. So it's funny, you were talking about the older cars as being junk, basically. And it's funny because Johnny O'Connell was telling us a story about Dale Sr. doing an interview saying, oh, that's the best car I've ever driven, or something along those lines. And Johnny was just like, those NASCARs must be just absolute trash.
Well, yeah, the old Cup cars were, garbage compared to sports car. I mean, just like, it's crazy. I mean, even it doesn't even matter what you compare it to. I mean, like the I mean, going back into even the 80s, the Camaros and Beretta Trans Am cars, or the Roush Mustangs, those were so far superior to the 1980 Cup cars, and just every step of the way. And I mean, but it's not a fair comparison. You're not comparing apples to apples, obviously. But yeah, no. So Dale Senior and Junior both loved driving the Corvette because of its performance capabilities. They just literally, I mean, it was downforce, brakes, tires, you go right, proper gearbox, all the things that NASCAR cars didn't have.
Right.
And
True.
they kind of do now, which is pretty cool.
Right. And and then you kind of brought up an interesting point that I've never really thought about. I mean, there's teams with multiple cars, and obviously 2001 there was 2 Corvettes. Like, how do teams kind of use that to their advantage in a 24-hour race when you have 2 or 3 cars on a team? Like, how do you work together?
I mean, you obviously you sort of do your own thing to the extent, but it allows you to, split a strategy, whether it's, if a caution comes out that's not necessarily an ideal time, you might split a strategy there, and because at least you have one car that can, someone's going to be right. It's going to be one or the other that gets lucky. So it allows you to do things like that. And it does allow you to have one car maybe go a little bit more aggressively than the other. And you're basically hedging your bet, right? Because you have one that's going to go harder, and then one that's a little bit more conservative, and at that point you're gambling. If there's attrition, you'll be covered. And
right.
That's all well and good. Those plans usually go sideways, though.
Right.
It's like the engineers have all these things scripted out, and believe me, by the end of the first or second hour, you could tear that piece of paper up and just start over, because the races always take on a life of their own, and you just have to be able to respond to whatever happens in real time. And you see that so often in these races coming down the last couple of hours. You really don't know if there's a yellow stuff that's completely out of your control. And but you try and get yourself in a position where you've got enough fuel to make the right number of stops in the last couple of hours, so that you don't need that quote unquote extra stop. You're 10 minutes short or something like that. So you start doing the back timing of the race in the last probably 6 hours, 5-6 hours. You start looking at the finish and trying to get yourself dialed in for that. But you just hope that you can stay out of pit lane. I mean, that's the trick to the full thing is keep the car on the track, and no unnecessary pit stops. If you want to do fuel, tire, driver change next, just rinse and repeat, fuel, tires, drivers, and just keep doing that, and you'll do well. And some of the driver change thing, because of the more recent IMSA rules, it's a lot easier now, because they have these minimum stop times. You have to be stopped for however many seconds it is. And the fuel takes longer. So like going back to like when I was doing it, you'd have to do 20-second driver changes, because the fuel would be in the car and the tires would be done. So, anytime, you didn't want the driver change to be costing you time on the racetrack. So, but now you have, like north of 30 seconds or even longer in some cases. So these pit stops tend to be a little bit more leisurely than they used to be. And I think that a lot of it is because of safety and, whatever their reasoning is. I think some of it is even limiting the amount of crew guys. So whatever the case is, it is what it is. But you still, like I say, you want to do fuel and tires and change your drivers and keep the car, off of the unscheduled pit stops. If you can do that, you're going to be in good shape. And and then the question is, most of the teams are going to have to do brakes at some point. You have to do your pads and rotors. but they can, if you get a full course caution, give or take midway through the race, anywhere in that 10 to 14 hour range, you'll see guys come in and do the brakes, and it really doesn't cost you that much. So, that's it. And then of course, if it's raining, you probably don't need to do the brakes. So there's lots of variables.
Well, for you guys, when you did driver switches, I mean, obviously you're 6'6", right? 6'5",
Yeah.
6'6".
Yeah.
What? So going from you to someone like Johnny O'Connell. I mean, Johnny's like what, 6 foot? Like what? So usually there's like the inserts and stuff. Like, did you guys use inserts, or kind of how did that work?
Yeah. So what we did, Ron and I, even though I'm taller than Ron, we're similar in terms of our waist and length of our legs and everything. So we sat in the same seat without any changes, adjustments. So our seat and belts and everything was just fine between the two of us. No changes at all. Then for Johnny, he used a insert that went just behind his back, like from the top of his butt up to his sort of shoulders, put in an insert. And then we ran a secondary left side lap belt that was longer, right? So he'd have his crotch strap, his right side lap belt, and then the secondary lap belt for Johnny was longer because he was obviously sitting further forward, so he needed that extension, and then the shoulder harnesses. So it was really just a matter of adding the secondary lap belt, and then Johnny would just put the insert in, and then pretty much good to go. At that point, we didn't adjust, the steering wheel and everything was all set, and worked out pretty well. And we could, we were actually the thing that was funny, and it always confounded the team guys, but the fastest driver changes out in out was always between Ron and myself, and we were obviously by far the two biggest guys, and they could never figure out how the two big guys could actually do it. But we just had it down. We had a good thing going.
I tell you, one of the craziest driver.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Real quick. No, I was going to say one of the craziest driver changes. I go to the Rolex 24 every year with my dad, and remember when Zanardi did it a couple years ago, and just seeing him change is pretty incredible.
That's right. I remember watching that on TV, and it's unbelievable. Yeah.
What I was going to ask is, about when would you guys start doing your strategy sessions for the race? I mean, is this something that started months ahead, or
months ahead? Yeah. Like example, like the in 2000 when we finished second, Ron and I, it was just the two of us. We went to that Carrabba's for dinner.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that. Yeah,
Daytona Beach, and we sat there just over a couple of cold beers and sort of lamented the fact that we came up short. And we also realized that this was something that was very much within our grasp if it was done, if we did it right. And so for us, it really started that, right after the race. So, 3 hours after the race, we were already thinking about how do we come back and do this and win this thing. And to more specifically answer your question, the teams will have ironed this thing out. I mean, it's obviously done now. They have a plan in place, and now, like I say, best laid plans go south. I mean, all it takes is for a driver to cramp up. You start to have a problem inside the cockpit, or the driver's not feeling well, or whatever the case is, and that could be an unnecessary or an extra pit stop, and that interrupts. All of a sudden now the amount of time the drivers are in the car, that's changed. Someone's having to pick up slack. If there's any mechanical things with the car, or the driver goes off the track, any number of things obviously can destroy those plans, obviously in a hurry. But the planning is probably done months in advance. Like as soon as, I guarantee you, as soon as Petit Le Mans was done, the focus shifted straight to Daytona, and all heads were in the game for the Rolex race.
I think last year, I think there was a driver that tested positive for COVID, I think during the race or something, if I remember correctly. And so they had to, someone had to do an extra stint or whatever. So there's a lot more variables now.
Yeah, they should just don't test and everyone will be just fine.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it's so dumb.
I don't know if they're still testing. They may not still be testing. I don't know.
I sure hope not. I mean, the guy's sitting in a race car all by himself. He's not hurting anyone. Leave him alone.
With the helmet on.
With the helmet on, right? Exactly. Breathing nice, clean air. But yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. That's yeah. We used to get some serious carbon monoxide headaches. The cars. Oh my God, because they didn't really care about us drivers too much back in those days.
Did you have the vent hoses? Did you have a vent hose at all in your helmet?
No, they didn't.
Well, I know they don't now, but now they basically have like air conditioning in the cars, right?
We didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
There was a little air scoop that hung off by the window net that would just, like a little NACA that would just blow some air into the car and just circulate it a little bit. But the engineers didn't even like that because it was extra drag. But that's all right. Times change for the better sometimes.
Yeah.
But not always, though. Not always. But no, we've got an exciting race that's coming up, and the one thing I'm dreading, and I know, Aaron, you go down there, so you don't watch on TV, but for those of us that do watch it on TV, I love the guys that do the broadcast. I know most of them very well and for a very, very long time. But I got to tell you, the one thing that I'm absolutely dreading is listening to Calvin talk about the championship and the points race literally before the race begins. It's a freaking 24-hour race. The first one, I guarantee you, there ain't no one going to that race that's thinking about points. They want to win. They want to win that race. And okay, yeah, sooner you obviously want to finish as high up as you can and get as many points as possible. But they ain't points racing.
I mean, 50% of the drivers aren't even in the championship. I mean, they're just doing that race.
Exactly. So I'm throwing down on my old friend Calvin. I'm completely, literally dreading listening to him talk about the championship and points, because I know he's going to do it, and he's just going to give me a headache. I'm going to have to mute.
Right.
It's all good, but we're actually just lucky to have a good Peacock package and be able to watch that race. It'd be fun.
I know you're not a big fan of going back to some races, but you got to go back to it sometime.
Yeah, I guess I missed all the anniversaries. I'll have to wait for another anniversary.
Well, they honor some of the winners and stuff, right?
Oh yeah, they do all that stuff. Yeah, maybe for 25 will be a big one. So like in 3 years will be a 25th anniversary. Maybe they'll do something.
Yeah,
we'll see. I don't know. If not, I can just buy a ticket and go hang out in the infield. That'll be more fun anyway.
Yep.
Like seriously, like go back and do it properly.
Right. And Dale, you're talking about the commentators, Dale Jr. I think he'll probably be doing it again this year. He's done the past several years. He does a really good job with that.
He does. Yeah, no, he's fun to listen to. And I mean, obviously knows exactly what he's talking about, but he's actually, I enjoy listening to him, period. He's an entertaining guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
He does a good job. He does a good job with this podcast. I don't know if you ever listened to his podcast.
Yeah, I've picked up a few of them. Yeah. Yeah, no, I enjoy. I'm waiting for my invite, but I don't think I'm high enough up the A list in his world to get on there.
I think you should be.
Yeah, well, whatever.
So for this preview show, it may just be you. I don't know. So last year we pieced together Halsmer, and then we pieced together Mimo Gidley. I think we're going to do something similar maybe this year. I think we may get our good buddy Randy Lanier to do a little 10-15 minute. I don't know if you're familiar with Randy at all, but he's He's a funny guy. He's a good guy. Interesting story for sure. And his
Oh,
story getting into, because his first ever Rolex, I think he was a spectator and there was a seat available and he got in the car and was quick. So they hired him on the spot.
that's pretty cool. Yeah, well, it's always, what, back in those days, it was show up with your helmet. I mean,
Yeah.
literally guys would literally walk to the racetrack without a ride. They just walk around with their helmet bag for a week, and more often than not, they'd end up in a car somewhere. So it's
Some would
pretty neat.
check out. There's always something, right?
Yeah, there's always, I mean, even at the Speedway, that stuff used to happen, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Guys walking around with their helmet, hanging around in the Simpson room, waiting for something to happen.
I mean, it still
waiting for-
happens to an extent. People still definitely do that.
Yeah,
maybe more
it's-
so 10 years ago or so, but now it's probably a little tougher.
There just aren't enough cars.
Right.
It's just not. It's not even possible. It almost doesn't matter if you have the money now. It is what it is, right? I mean,
Right.
they're stretched about as far as they can go, I think.
Yeah, with the way the engine programs are, it just that's hard to overcome because you got two people trying to support two engine manufacturers trying to support the entire grid. That's tough.
Yeah, it's a big ask.
Yeah.
It's a big ask. Well, at least they're not having to do any development.
Right.
And those cars they're going to be eligible for historic racing before too long. You could get them to sanction, get HSR to sanction them.
Well, at least you can't call them throwaway race cars anymore. Everybody's always used to complain, hey, we only run them a year or two and we get rid of them.
Yeah, they're definitely getting their money's worth out of those things. There's no doubt about it.
They are.
Yeah. That's for another show, boys. That's another show. But the flip side to that is these new GTP cars, right? This is what's cool. And I'll tell you what, there's been some negative, some of the negative stuff has been brought to light in terms of the age of the Indy cars with the emergence of these new GTP cars, because it really shows the contrast in terms of, look, I mean, what are the Indy cars are 10, 12 years old, whatever they are, probably all of 10 years old. And now you have these nice, shiny new prototype cars, and you can really, really see how cool it can be, how good it could be in terms of like if Indy were able to do something like that. But in the meantime, it's going to be great for prototype racing because I think that'll just even gravitate more people towards them.
They look more like spaceships. I think they look more like spaceships than they do actual vehicles, but they're very cool. And I saw a picture because I sent it to you, Scott, of the cockpit, of Pagano's car. There's so many buttons in that car. It's insane. I mean, they gotta be, I think I've heard people say like they get sent like some kind of like, almost like a instruction manual or something, right?
Oh yeah. No, we get like, even when I was doing it, it was probably a 30 to 40 page, we used 3-ring binders back in those days, but it was like a 30 to 40 page booklet that had all of the car functions and everything that you were supposed to learn. I'm not sure anyone ever fully read them. I'm sure a couple of the engineers did, but it was there if you wanted to do it. If I always figured the cars are all set up with alarms. And if the alarm goes off, it automatically flips to the page, so if it was, page X, section 3 or whatever, page 3, section X, whatever, it doesn't matter. If an alarm goes off, it's going to go automatically to that page and bring it up anyway. So it's one of those things that I never really worried too much about it. As a driver, there's a whole heck of a lot you can do anyway. Other than change, if they want you to start changing maps or change functions and, make some stuff, do some adjustments from the cockpit, you obviously do that, but they'll talk you through it. But yeah, no, it's pretty crazy with how complicated they've made it. It's so unnecessary. It just like, bring back Formula 5000, just a good old, just something simple, 3 pedals, a steering wheel and a gear shift,
Right.
make noise, go fast, burn rubber, look good, sound good, like even I saw a video of these prototypes launching. I mean, so now they launch off the batteries. They don't even, like the cars, they don't even fire up. They just, there's no noise when the car launches because they're launching off batteries, and then the engine
Right.
kicks in, once they're however many feet, out of the pit box, then you can hear the thing, fire up. And I said to my son, I'm like, it's just one more thing to make these things completely idiot proof now, because you can't even break the car driving out of the pits, because it used to be like, you just rev it up, dump the clutch. I mean, you could literally pop your half shafts in the pit lane if or burn your clutch out. You could screw the car up if you didn't drive the car properly just leaving the pit box. Now the thing with all these launch controls, and it's not even, now it's just off the battery, so it just goes. You're not doing anything to the drivetrain to engage. It's just like put it in D and drive and off you go. It's just, like I say, it's just one more thing. It's one step closer to virtual reality video game world, which is, like I say, it is what it is, but it's sort of sad in a way. But
I'm sure as a driver, you hate anything that takes it out of the driver's hands.
Yeah, like seriously. I mean, I love it because it's something that I had to do, or I had to learn how to do, and I was actually good at it. But there was an art to being able to make lap time and take care of the car. And some were better than others at it. And I mean, like going back to the one of the classic comparisons in Indy cars back in the 70s and 80s would be Mario and Al.
I was gonna say that.
And okay, I mean, what I'm talking about. And I mean, that's in terms of the contrasting styles. I mean, one guy took care of his car and the other guy, ran it a little bit harder. And you on many occasions, you saw the difference in the outcome.
Oh, I think if Mario had the cars they have today, Mario may have won 7 500s. 8.
No, you're not lying. Absolutely true. Yes, that's so accurate. I never really thought about that. Yes, but if you put him in today and he didn't have to worry about the mechanical side of it, oh hell yeah, he'd drive away from everyone. Yeah.
And people have to remember too about that era, the teams Mario was driving for everything was the absolute edge of technology at the time. So if you were hard on it, I mean, you didn't have the testing capabilities you have today and the analyzations and all of that. So man, if you're hard on it, you found out really quickly where the limits were.
Yeah, no, and like I said, that was actually part of the art of driving the car was being, like I said, being able to make the lap time, but still be able to not break it.
Right.
And there would, that was a skill. And some, like I say, some guys could do it better than others. Very, if you wanted to make it's not a comparison, but like an analogy, something that would make sense in terms of today's drivers. Some guys are better at saving fuel than others.
Right.
Some guys just have a knack for being able to make the cars run longer on fuel. Scott Dixon, and that's just something that he's able to do. And that's very similar to what we're talking about in terms of, the reliability factor in terms of how you drove cars back in those days where you actually could break them. And sadly, it's sort of like it's just a lost art, something that will never be needed again. It's a finesse and a nuance that drivers just simply don't have to learn how to do it because it's not necessary anymore. But the most similar comparison would be the guys that are able to make good fuel mileage and still go fast. Those would be the same guys that would be able to be like Al.
Right.
You know, that's
Yeah.
that same. It's the same sort of thing that's going on
Yeah.
in your head. You know.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the driving ranking system a little bit earlier, and that seems to be a big topic conversation for a lot of people. And the big thing is people don't really understand how it works. I don't think anyone understands how it works. And you, Chris, being a former chief steward of CART, probably understands that there's a lot of politics in racing, and I'm sure that definitely has a lot to do with it.
Oh yeah, but the thing that's funny is you've got guys that are like O'Connell as a perfect example.
Yeah, he was telling us about that. Yeah.
He wanted to be a bronze, and they wouldn't make him a bronze.
Now he
And-
is, I think.
And now he's finally a bronze. And you think about it, it would be like if you're a young upcoming driver, you want to graduate from bronze to silver as quickly as possible, and you want to get to, you know, gold or whatever the top thing is as quickly as possible. That's obviously where you want to go, because a grade A is better than a grade B, you know, and gold is better than silver. Silver is better than bronze. But for some of these guys, as you're getting like O'Connell, you get some of these guys
Bronze is better. Yeah.
Later in their career, because the bronze opens up opportunities for them to get in a car. And you think about it, if you're a team that's running obviously in the AM, but it's only a factor in the AM division, that the pro cars have all, gold drivers, so it doesn't matter. But if you put a bronze driver that's a guy like O'Connell, so what are the advantages to that? So even though he's, a little bit older, but here's what you get. Here's the benefit of having a really skilled, experienced driver like Johnny being able to put him in as a bronze driver, is take lap time and set it aside, because it really doesn't matter, because he can drive the car plenty fast enough, particularly if you're just going bronze to bronze, head to head. One, he's going to be able to drive the car more hours throughout the 24. He's going to be able to do more hours than most of the other bronze drivers that might, not do their full load. So, because he's capable of doing a full, 6-8 hours behind the wheel for sure. Secondly, he's not going to screw anything up. He's not going to throw the car off the track. He's not going to make rookie mistakes. He's not going to break the car. He's not going to get involved in a traffic situation that damages the car. None of that's going to happen with that ilk of a bronze driver. So there's huge advantages to having that guy be a bronze. There's probably a lot of silver guys that are thinking, well, because there's actually more value for them as a bronze than as a silver.
Yeah.
They might be a dime a dozen as a silver driver, because there's a whole bunch of them, right? But now if you can have a third driver that's really capable, that's a big advantage. So it's an interesting thing where I think it's one of those unintended consequences, unforeseen circumstances that that the FIA or all those the licensing guys, they probably weren't thinking that completely through. They were trying to figure out a way to make it so that the GT-AM category, wouldn't just be stacked up with pro drivers. It just, protect the amateur side. But, now they're figuring out, the teams are figuring out ways around that, is really what it boils down to.
I saw today they just announced Will Power is doing the Rolex 24. I think it's the first time he's really done any kind of IMSA racing, I believe. But which I'm really surprised about. But he would probably be. I mean, would he be he's never done a sports car race, so he'd be a bronze, right? Or would he be a silver?
He's a gold.
Would he be, even though he hasn't driven?
Well, he only won the IndyCar championship last year.
Well, I know, but there's a lot of people that don't get the rankings they probably deserve.
Yeah. Right. Well, okay, so give him a silver, But yeah, no, I mean, to me, it's like I don't know what. I mean, there's no way he's a bronze. I mean, give him.
I would hope not.
I mean, the guy's. You know, it's like he doesn't have a super license, but he should have a super license because he's that good. You know,
Right.
so
And that's a whole other can of worms. Is the
that's
super
a whole
points
other
and
thing. That's right. You know, it's just retarded is what that is.
well,
Yeah.
we learned from a live show. We do a live show now at a local bar here once a month, and someone told a story about Colton Herta. Obviously, he was trying to get in Formula One, and he was going to race. What was it? Formula 4, F4? Yeah, Formula 4 to get
Yeah.
super license points, and because obviously he would probably sweep every single race, and the FIA would not allow it.
They wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
So it's they're just retarded. Like, who knows what they're thinking? Like, seriously. And this is all fairly recent with these new super license rules that they've concocted. You know, they've basically made it so that you have to race Formula 2 to even think about being in F1. You know, it's the only road to F1 is through F2, and it's just
I mean, it's so funny to think that a Willpower, Scott Dixon, all those guys, oh, you don't have enough points. You know what I'm saying? It's insane.
It's insane. You know, like you win the Indy 500 and it's like it's worth nothing, you know, in their eyes. It makes no sense. You know,
Right.
Well,
you know,
it's kind of similar, but we had Enrique Bernoldi on our show, which drove Formula One, drove in the Indy 500. He's hooked up with the FIA now, and he says when he goes out to eat with people like with FIA, he goes, no one cares that he drove in the Indy 500. No one cares about IndyCar at all. They just care about Formula One.
Yeah, no, they're very, yeah. Well, fair enough. You know, I mean, that's they are sort of the sharp end of the spear these days. So we'll give them that.
Yep.
You know, it's they got they've earned it. They've done good things in the last few years.
Yeah.
You know, particularly on the event side, impressive. You know, I hate the cars. Like, sorry, I was talking about how big the prototypes are these days. Formula One cars are twice the size that they ought to be. It's insane how big those cars are.
What do you think about the Halo?
And I guess, look, I mean, there ain't no going back. My preference would be no. But I'd rather have the Halo than the windscreen from aesthetically. Like aesthetically, like just in terms of my eyes, I don't find either one appealing. But aesthetically, it's not as, you know, obnoxious as the windscreen or the aero screen or whatever the hell they call it. But you know, it's you know, like I said, it's sort of one of those. They're here to stay. They obviously, you know, have proven to be effective, and so, you know, that conversation just is over. Now it's just a matter of making the car's appearance, you know, look a little bit better. At least with Formula One, they build their cars often enough that it's sort of incorporated into the design, so it looks like it belongs. You know, it's obviously a bolt-on piece for the Dolaras, so that's, you know, until there's a new car design, it would be hard to integrate something into the, you know, make it actually look good.
Right.
You know,
You would have to change the cockpit area and the nose and
yeah,
get everything to where aesthetically it looks good and performs. So
yeah, exactly, yeah. You know, and make it so it's not so heavy. You know, get some of that weight off. You know,
some of my concern with them is if you look at them, it looks like the way it is, it's a little higher in the front. They kind of looks like it kind of goes down a little bit. You know, it's been a minute since I've looked at one, but it often looks like the driver's head's kind of sticking up a little bit on the sides. And I'm thinking, well, why do we have this if the driver's head is
probably
kind
just
of
the
above
angle.
the halo?
It's probably just the angle.
And
which
it may
is-
be.
Yeah.
It may absolutely be.
yeah. I mean, keep in mind you're talking to a guy that my head was above the roll bar, so
right. The I saw your car. I think I texted you. I was in the museum in the basement. They have your car in the basement. One of your
Yeah,
cars in the basement.
beauty. Yeah, the 84 car.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a sweet car. Still
Does
looking
the
good after years.
does the museum own it or does someone else own it?
No, it's a museum. It was
Yeah.
donated. It was donated. Yeah. So yeah, that was the two of them. Ron Hemmelgarn has the other one.
Hmm.
I think it's in his office up in Ohio somewhere. But yeah, so the Speedway's got that one, and it's a beautiful race car. Still, like I say, still looks good. Looks better than the new cars, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of those older cars were really good looking race cars.
Yeah.
Not all of them.
No,
Some of
not
them.
all. Yeah, some of them were really good looking race cars. You know, it's
Yeah.
you know, but that was the fun part, was being able to try different things. You know, we talked a
Yeah.
little bit about that before. You know, it's just and
Mhm.
again, that's another thing. You know, those days are gone.
Yep.
We'll never see it again. But you know, that's that's leaning back into Daytona. That's one of the reasons I'm so excited about this year's Rolex race is, you know, new cars, shiny
Right.
new toys. I mean, it's exciting, you know, and you know, this, I mean, I was thinking about it the other day, and it's like, you know, these cars really, you know, it should be 2030 and they should still be running these race cars, or, you know, updated versions of, but this should be the basis, the foundation for something that, you know, 7-8 years from now, at the end of this decade, you know, those cars are still out there doing their thing, going strong, you know, at least in some, you know, some evolution of this platform, you know, if all goes well, you know.
Right.
And you know, and that's where, you know, maybe this, or, you know, hopefully we don't have to wait that long, but in terms of getting that car count up a little bit, you know, and you know, get some more privateers out there, so it's not all factory. And I'm sure the factories
Right.
would be happy with that as well.
Probably.
You know, especially GM, if they're going to spend all that money in Formula One.
If Formula One lets them in.
Well, right, that's a good point. It's not a given. There's no automatic entry.
Yeah, it's
Like,
definitely not an open door society.
No, it's not. It's not. It's a different
But
world.
it's very funny, some of the people they let through that door, though, because money talks. I mean, at the end of the day, because they've let some pretty interesting people through that door.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's like it's there's what's it, you know, rules for thee, not for me, or whatever.
Yeah, rules for me, not for thee.
Yeah, you know, it's yeah, they do their own thing. You know,
Yes.
it's not a just society, that's for sure. Very closed world. But that's all right. That's right. We got what we got, and we like it.
I
Good
agree with
American.
that.
Yeah. But yeah, good stuff. But yeah, I don't know much else in terms of you know, the you know, looking forward to the Daytona race. I'm, you know, it's more curiosity to see what's going to happen on the prototype side. And I think, you know, like I said earlier, we kind of know what's going to happen and how it's going to play on the GT side. It's just going to be a dogfight. It's going to be a sprint. They're going to be, you know, hammer and tong the full way. And you know, see who's able to, like I said, who's able to keep the car on the racetrack out of the pit lane. And usually it's a bunch of them, and you know, it should be a pretty good race.
Now, I would think I think we all know what team you probably root for in GTs.
No,
Maybe not.
actually,
No?
you'd be shocked. I'm not like sitting there like rooting for Corvette racing. I'm not rooting against them, but it's be happy for them if they do well. Be happy for them, but I'd be no less happy for someone else if they do well. I really don't have a dog in the fight. You know, it's I watch it very, you know, I'm not involved anymore, and you know, I know that sounds strange, but You know, like I say, I'm not drinking the Corvette Kool-Aid. You know, it's
Right.
you know,
Well, the people you knew, most of them probably moved on, and
yeah, you know,
and you have no real connections to it after a while. It's just something you did.
yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I would never have been a good Corvette ambassador like they've got fellows doing and stuff like that, because personally, I think the new cars look like an NSX. Like I can't stand.
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
I really don't like how they look. I think they're horrible looking.
Well,
And
it's that Japanese styling with that real sharp lines.
yeah,
That you see that in a lot of Asian cars. It's just so sharp. And
yeah,
it's I saw one the other day, and honestly, for a brief moment, I thought it was a kit car.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, because of the kind of that square back,
Mhm.
right.
it had kind of that squared off back, and I just glanced at it. I wasn't really paying attention. I thought somebody was driving a kit car around.
Right. Yeah. But like I say, it's just, to me, when I first saw them, you know, a couple years ago, or whenever they came out a few years ago, I'm like, oh, it's an NSX. And, you know, people are like, how could you say that? Because, you know, you're a Corvette guy. I'm like, well, no, I used to be a Corvette guy. I'm, you know, but I was a Corvette racing guy. I never actually particularly loved the road cars anyway. So,
Right.
you know, but that's a whole different thing. But the new ones, they do nothing for me. You know, it's not like I'm going to root against Corvette racing, but I just don't like how the cars look. You know, I think that
I like the ones about 10 years ago. They had a really nice kind of more of a rounded look about 10 years ago.
they were sweet, like the ZR1 kind of thing that they did.
Yeah.
It was very good looking car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I like roundness to a car. I don't like harshness.
yeah. And to me, you know, there's and you know, Aaron, it's just, there's one thing when you're out at the infield at Daytona, you know, there's something about, you know, when you hear the sound of like the Porsche GT car, you know, that engine tone is just unmistakable. And it's not the most beautiful sound you've ever heard, but it's so identifiable. And, you know, a lot of that changed with Corvette because of the, you know, the new car. They lost some of the thunder. And, you know, it's you know, like you still, you know, like the big, you know, the V10s, I mean, they still sound good. But, you know, that's the one thing that I just love about the GT cars is the sound. You still have the sound of the different types of cars. And it's just, I always just love that. And just, you know, being able to hear them around the track, it's just awesome. And, you know, hopefully the new cars, the new prototypes won't be, you know, too goofy with their batteries. But, you know, you got to make them sound good. They sure look good.
When you have all the technology those cars have, I mean, there's a lot more things that can go wrong, right?
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. Like I say, I hope it rains. We give those electronics a good test. See how waterproof that stuff is.
See how sealed up they got her.
Feel how sealed up it is, right? Yeah.
Right.
It's a good one.
But I don't think I really have anything else as far as the Rolex goes. Do you, Scott?
No, I sure don't. It's always fun talking to you, Chris.
Yeah, no, likewise. Absolutely. So, I'll look forward to catching your episode, and I'll definitely keep my eyes peeled for your O'Connell podcast, your O'Connell show. Keep my eyes peeled for that, and something to look forward to for sure.
We're going to have one of your other buddies on at some point. I got to get back with him. Tommy Kendall.
Oh, TK, right on.
Yeah,
absolutely. Tommy Kendall. It's a good man. I was thinking about him just the other day. Yeah, he's a good
Quiet,
dude.
reserved Tommy Kendall.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There was a day that he was quiet and reserved. Damn near goody two shoes. Right. I knew him back in those days. I've known both Tommy Kendalls.
Both. Right.
Yeah. No, he's a good dude. He's awesome. I love Kendall, and man, that's a good race car driver there.
Yeah.
One good race car driver. Yep. I'm a
Absolutely.
big fan. I'm seriously a big fan of Tommy Kendall. It's one of my all-time favorites. So that's cool. That'll be definitely something to look forward to. Say hi for me.
Oh, we definitely will.
Yeah. Yeah, I did his back when him and Justin were doing that. What was the name of the show? They did it. That was, they kind of, I think they got sort of screwed up when the COVID stuff didn't do them any favors. Cause that's sort of,
something torque or something.
yeah, it was the Torque. Yeah. Torque show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, I jumped on with them. Actually, it was during COVID. They were just sort of doing it in a studio or airplane hangar or some like a garage or something. It was kind of random, but yeah, no, Kendall's good fun. He's definitely good fun. It's awesome. Sweet, man. Right on. Well, I'll listen and I'll report back. I'll be a good fact checker since that's a modern term. I'll be a fact checker on Kendall. I can.
That's funny.
Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. It's all good. Good times. Yeah, that's for sure. Sweet, boys.
Well, thanks a lot, Chris.
Yeah,
really
thanks. Appreciate it.
We good? All right. Well, peace out, gents, and look forward to next time. And enjoy the Rolex.